Only 21 albums in US history have sold more than 1 million copies in a single tracking week. Hey neighbor, welcome back to Beyond ARTV. My name is John. I was born in 1991, and if you're wondering why I'm offering up my birthday information, it's because Nielsen Music, Nielsen Soundscan, now known as Luminate, is the company that was founded in 1991 to actually track album sales. As we go through all 21 albums, I'm sure that some of my older viewers out there are probably going to wonder, why are all these albums from the 90s or the 2000s, the 21st century? It's because, again, Nielsen Soundscan was formed in 1991, meaning before that, it was always a guesstimate for albums that sold more than 1 million, because obviously people like the Beatles did that. For the sake of clarity and going with the numbers that we actually know, we're only doing the 21 that have officially been certified by Soundscan, Luminate, whatever you want to call them. I hope you guys enjoy this video. If you do, then please hit the like button, and let's dive in. In what's known as the Soundscan Era, aka Luminate, Whitney Houston was the first artist to ever sell more than 1 million in a week with the Bodyguard soundtrack in the fall of 1992. This was a massive film. Whitney Houston actually starred in it herself alongside Kevin Costner, and this soundtrack is certified diamond, and in its first week, it sold just over 1 million copies. Country superstar Garth Brooks is next on the list with his album Double Live, which is of course a live album. It sold about 1,085,000 copies, just topping Whitney Houston's total. This of course was in 1998, so there was a significant gap between Whitney Houston and Garth Brooks doing this. We didn't have to wait too long for it to happen again, because by the end of the 90s, the boy band craze was officially in swing, and they saw some staggering sales figures. Up first on that list is Millennium by Backstreet Boys, the first boy band, I guess, to officially do this. They sold more than 1.1 million copies. Literally after that, it gets so crazy, because just 10 months after that, NSYNC, a rival boy band featuring Joey Fatone, Justin Timberlake, and more, they sold 2.4 million plus copies of their album No Strings Attached in March 2000. For more than 15 years, NSYNC held the crown for the fastest selling officially tracked album of all time in the States. Britney Spears became a household name seemingly overnight, and with her album Oops, I Did It Again coming out just months after NSYNC's No Strings Attached, she turned up the heat, not quite to their tune, but selling 1.3 million plus copies of the album week 1. The proving ground for artists that were blowing up in the late 90s came at the turn of the 21st century to see, were they just a one-trick pony, or would they actually go on to sustain sales? And with the release of the Marshall Mathers LP, Eminem became the Detroit rapper that officially put himself on the map to stay, selling 1.7 million copies of the album in its first week. Regardless of how you feel about him, you might be surprised or maybe even grateful to see a rock act on the list. Limp Bizkit, the new metal band, were never bigger than Chocolate Starfish and the hot dog flavored water. They were coming off Woodstock 99, all of the media coverage, and that album sold 1,055,000 copies in its first week. It's the return of the Killer Bees on number 8, because with 1.5 million copies sold in its first week, the boy bands were back on their bullshit with Black and Blue by Backstreet Boys. Hey, would you look at that? I'm wearing the most appropriate shirt of all time to be talking about the Beatles. And I think most of us probably understand that the Beatles have sold more than 1 million in a week multiple times, but in terms of officially counted sales, 1, their greatest hits compilation, in its 6th week of existence after release at Christmas season 2000, sold 1.2 million copies in a week. Apple Records knew exactly what they were doing with that release, poising it for the holiday season that year, and everybody had that as a stocking stuffer in the year 2000. After just 4 albums, NSYNC decided to call it quits and start their solo careers, with the most prolific of those, of course, being Justin Timberlake, but with their final album Celebrity, released in 2001, they still managed to sell a very impressive 1.8 million week 1. Rap star Eminem blew expectations out of the water again as he sold 1.3 million copies in the debut frame of The Eminem Show, released in 2002. This might be the most understated or else forgotten in a modern setting of the 21 albums that we're covering today, but Norah Jones sold 1,022,000 copies of Feels Like Home in 2004. Now this surprised me because I was expecting her album Come Away With Me, I believe that came out in 2002, but instead it was the follow-up to that because the hype was so real for the first one. Usher was a full-blown R&B superstar by 2004, so it's no surprise that he also had a massive record that year. Confession sold 1,096,000 copies in its first frame and went on to become an iconic album that's still very popular now. Well damn, someone shredded in frame and it certainly ain't me. In fact, it's 50 Cent, a rapper on the cover of his own album The Massacre, which sold 1,141,000 copies in its first frame. Another really respectable rap release is up next. It's the Carter 3 by Lil Wayne. It just barely cleared the million mark, selling 1,006,000 in its first week, which is our lowest total, but it's also still impressive that it somehow managed to climb that gate. We've known this was coming the entire time, and we will most definitely see her again. It's Speak Now by Taylor Swift. Probably her best release overall. It had country, it had a bit of pop, it was hinting at what she would do in the future, and it's so well written, in fact, entirely by Taylor. This album sold more than 1 million copies by clearing 1,047,000, and I actually ended up with 2 of those week 1. This next one actually stirred up quite a bit of controversy because of the marketing tactics that were used to actually get this up to over 1.1 million sales. Born This Way, Lady Gaga. It makes sense that she's in the millions club, but the way that her label did it was pretty shady by knocking down a lot of the discounted albums to just 99 cents, leading Billboard to actually make a change to the rule where you can't sell an album for less than $3.99 for it to count in its first frame. We are most definitely getting back together with Taylor Swift as we arrive at her 2012 release Red, which upped the ante yet again, 1.2 million copies first week. Would you get a load of that? Taylor Swift again, 1989 came out in 2014. It was her foray into synth pop, and it once again set the bar even higher. I don't know how she did it, but her fans are definitely impactful when it comes to buying albums. This sold 1,287,000 copies, which bested her last album and the one before that. All hail Queen Adele for selling 3,378,000 copies in the United States alone first week for her album 25 in 2015. It outpaced even NSYNC, broke a 15-year standing record, and in its second and fifth weeks, thanks to the Christmas holiday, she also sold more than 1 million copies in those weeks. And finally, we arrive at the last album to ever sell more than 1 million copies in a single frame. In fact, to the tune of 1,238,000, Taylor Swift proved that she was a reigning superstar. She has the crown with 4 of these albums selling more than 1 million copies in a week. This didn't quite top the sales of 1989, but it was still incredibly impressive nonetheless, even if I can't really stand the album. To be 1,000% transparent, I don't think that we'll ever see an artist sell 1 million copies in a single week ever again. Which of these albums appearing surprised you the most, or were there some that you expected to see but they weren't here at all? Let me know in the comments down below. Remember, this was just for albums that sold more than 1 million copies in a single tracking week. If you want to see the full list, there is a link to the source in the description down below. Please hit the like button while you're down there. Subscribe for the love of music. You can check out some more of my music list reactions on screen now, and I'll be back soon for more on Beyond ARTV.